Initially, as a child, I was always very interested in the liturgy, in the Mass. When I was a kid, we had a very good parish priest. He was a very kind man. And I remember when my grandmother died, my mother's mother. I just remember him looking after the family particularly well. I remember the funeral and the care he showed to my parents. And I was always struck by the difference that one person was able to make to such a big group of people. And then as I got older, I started serving Mass, and I was always very fascinated by the intricacies of what the priest was doing on the altar. And then I was at Catholic school, and prayer was just a part of our lives generally. We prayed before meals, and it was a very normal, natural part of life. And I always wanted to be a priest, and I think I told my parents that I wanted to be a priest when I was about 6 years old.
Wow.
And I never deviated from that. So many people come to priesthood, or you hear these stories of people who have had dramatic changes in their lives, or you often the classic story is, I was running away and telling God this isn't for me, and eventually he caught up with me. I've never had that. I always wanted to be a priest, and then I became a priest. It's a very normal and natural thing.
Wow. So you never even had like a little astronaut phase or anything like that?
I never did. I was at a priest phase.
That's awesome.
I've never ever wanted to do anything else. And people always say to me, what would you do if you weren't a priest? And I simply don't know the answer to that. So I don't think I'd be very good at anything else.
Have you ever questioned your faith or questioned your priesthood? And without going into too much detail, what was it that led to that?
I've never questioned my priesthood or the priesthood. I don't know whether that's just a gift of God or I've been lucky or whatever. There's never been a day I thought, I've done the wrong thing becoming a priest.
Amazing.
Have I questioned my faith? Do you know, it's going to be a really boring answer. No, not really. Do you know, I haven't. I'm really sorry. That's a really dreary answer. I've always just had a very gentle, constantly bubbling away relationship with God as far as I can see. And it's nothing dramatic or exciting. I think a good way to describe it is, when someone's been married for a really long time, often like a married couple can spend the whole evening sitting in silence, one playing on the phone, one watching telly, and they never speak a word to each other. But if one of them wasn't there, it would be a terrible thing. And that's a bit like my relationship with God, really. It's always there. It's, often it's not dramatic or exciting, but it's a constant presence in my life. And I've always been aware of God's presence, and sometimes you feel it more than other times, but I've never really questioned it, because I've never been given reason to question it, really.
Yeah, I think so. I know the person who asked that question, and they fall into a similar category to me, which is, it all happened, but you don't have the faith, if that makes sense. Like, you're halfway there, but you can't study yourself to faith. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So sometimes...
Well, no, you can't study yourself to faith, absolutely. You can. It's perfectly possible to know everything intellectually about Christianity.
Yeah.
But unless you have faith, which in many ways, is a supernatural gift in itself.
Yeah.
There's not a lot you can do with it. Faith is something that you can practice prayer, which helps. I mean, praying is the raising of the mind and the heart to God, and it's the setting aside of time to spend with God. Prayer is a great catch-all. There are many different ways to pray, but setting aside time to allow your heart to expand more, that will let the Lord in. And it's prayer. People often think that prayer is just like magic. It's a way of getting what you want, or it's a way of changing things. Prayer is a way of making yourself more like Jesus, and it's a way of opening the heart to allow space for God to enter into it. It's not like a recipe that if I say this many prayers and ask for this thing will happen. Prayer doesn't change God, prayer changes us. And the world around changes because of what we do as a result of our prayers. And I think it's possible. I think it's possible to pray your way to faith, but I don't think it's possible to study your way to faith. Because fundamentally, the church and religion, Christianity, is not an academic exercise. It's a relationship with the living person of Jesus Christ. And to enter into a relationship, you have to make an effort, as you do with a relationship with anybody. You can't have a relationship with somebody I'm a great fan of Napoleon. I've read every biography there is on Napoleon. I know everything about it. I've no relationship with him.
Yeah. True. That's quite a good analogy, I'd say. But I got my Bible app, and a little quote flashed up a few days ago, which I thought was quite pertinent, and it was in Jeremiah, and it says, "If you go looking for me, you will find me," which I guess that kind of aligns with what you were saying there. If you pray, if you ask for a relationship,
God is always there, always searching, always looking for us, and it's He's constantly running towards us, but we have to make those few little steps towards Him as well.
Yeah. Follow up. Christianity is growing in people my age.
So it would seem, yeah.
It's happening at a 2-to-1 rate in the Catholic Church compared to the Church of England.
Right.
Why do you think that is? What is it about the Catholic Church?
Well, I'm biased, obviously.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm asking you, right?
I would say because it's true.
Okay. Fair enough.
And that's semi-facetious, and it's not facetious. I would say because it's true, and because the human heart longs for truth, goodness, and beauty, because they are the attributes of God, for which our soul, which is made in His image and likeness, yearns for with this magnetic attraction. And it's why humans always fill that vacuum with something else. Even people who claim not to be religious at all will always have something in their life that resembles a religion, because it's a pale imitation of it, because the heart is being dragged towards God, and they may be resisting it and filling it with something else. I was talking to a lady the other day who is obsessed with Elvis, and she's been to Graceland 60 times. That's a pilgrimage.
That's profound, yeah.
That's a pilgrimage. Elvis is her God, the fan club is her church, the songs are their hymns. Like in COVID, that bizarre time, like these professors and scientists and stuff on the television were like bishops, and everything, all these regulations were their doctrine, and the banging the pans outside was the collective liturgy. The people naturally have this inclination towards religion, and they are all like pale kind of imitations. But the closer and closer you get, the closer you're getting to truth. And I believe, that the fullness of truth in its entirety subsists within the Catholic Church, and people are drawn to it. And it's immutable, and it's divinely revealed, and it's that stability and steadiness of truth for which people long as the anchor of their lives, and to which they can conform their hearts to, which draws people to it. I think you can go to, I remember this is a good example, we went to Westminster Abbey for something, and the Dean and one of the other ministers there were giving us a tour, and we walked into this chapel where they reserve their sacrament. And the Dean just stood there, and this other priest of the Church of England genuflected. "Why don't you genuflect?" And the Dean said, "Well, because I don't believe in transubstantiation." And his assistant said, "Well, I do believe in it." And it was so. In that moment, I found it so concrete. This business of these two are the same religion. They work in the same building, and yet they believe two totally different things, and that can be held in perfect harmony in the Church of England. And I think it's that confusion. It's not that people don't like confusion, but they find consistency in the Catholic Church.
So to summarise, in relation to what you said about the Church of England, it's the that Big Tent approach is too big tent.
It's too big.
If you can have two people, same job, same denomination, same building, transubstantiation, no transubstantiation, And that's a valid criticism.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah, it's a very valid criticism. I think...
and it's not a criticism, it's an observation. And they were both equally sincere in their beliefs, but they were poles apart in the same place. And the thing about the Catholic Church, one of the things that we are naturally attracted to as humans is unity. And one of the hallmarks of the Church, the Catholic Church, is unity. You can go. I mean, you'll have individual Catholics who may dissent from teachings of the Church. That's their problem. The teachings of the Church are universal, and I can go to Mass in Tokyo or in Sydney or in Los Angeles, and the churches there all believe exactly the same thing, and their liturgy is used from the same book, and their readings are the same. And it's that unity that people find attractive.
I don't think my religious opinions are sort of fully formed yet. Not that, although then again that implies that they are something which I form as opposed to something which is because I mean that's the whole point of a catechism, is it not? I mean, how much of it is my opinion, how much of it is teaching?
No, but yeah, your religious opinions are something that you have to formulate yourself. You do have to formulate themselves. You have to get to people may formulate such opinions that lead them to a position of accepting the catechism. John Henry Newman, for example, went through a great long period of study and exploration and discernment, which led him to accepting what were the teaching of the Catholic Church is that there's catechism, there's the deposit of faith, tradition, and scripture. That is one. The teaching of the Church is one great big block, and if you are a Catholic, again, as I say, there are plenty of Catholics who dissent from things. That's a different issue. That if you are a Catholic, you are obliged to believe these things, and if you don't believe them, there's no point in being Catholic. So the Church doesn't force its beliefs on people. It's a club you are welcome to join or not join, depending on how you see it. But once you've studied and you've discerned and you've formed an opinion that allows you to accept it, then you're right. It's not a matter of opinion. It's a matter of understanding the truth that has been revealed to us, and we can grow in our understanding of these things. But it's not for us to be a Catholic and say, well, I'm a Catholic and I accept the primacy of the Pope and I accept the sacrament of confession, I accept this, but I'm not so sure on transubstantiation. That's not how we work.
A lot of people my age, many young people, describe themselves as spiritual but not religious. What does that mean to you?
Not an awful lot. I think we always say that the only person I'm aware of who is spiritual but not religious is the devil, because he's a purely spiritual being, but he's in no way religious.
That's your point.
A spiritual but not religious is, in my experience, is usually a cop-out for people who are too lazy to go to church or to look into things properly for themselves. It's a totally vacuous statement, because I couldn't tell you what it means, because it can mean whatever you want it to mean. It means on the whole, it means I have a vague, passing understanding that maybe I'm not the centre of the universe, which is a good starting point. But it doesn't get you anywhere, and it doesn't mean very much. I mean, so many people say they're spiritual but not religious, but it's very rare to see any evidence of them doing anything with this, other than maybe kind of like going to a tarot card reading or something. Or
Crystals,
or it doesn't mean anything. Being spiritual but not religious means that basically it gives you the freedom, the permission, it grants you permission to yourself to basically do whatever you want, as far as I can see. It's far more intellectual honest for somebody to say, I am a Buddhist and I practice Buddhism. Fine, great. I mean, obviously that I don't believe in it. There's a lot of problems with it, but it's an intellectual standpoint, and it's a valid standpoint that you can defend. But to say I'm spiritual and not religious, as far as I can see, is just idleness.
To what extent are you allowed to be proud of yourself? And to what extent is it all God? Or is it quite a simple question?
What do you mean, is it all God? Do you mean our achievements?
I got my degree before I was religious. Do I thank God for this? Was this Reese doing hard work? How does it work?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the modern way of saying it is that God helps those who help themselves. The theological way of looking at it is, Aquinas tells us grace builds on nature. God, we are not kind of automatons that God controls. We are incarnational beings. We are spiritual beings, and we are physical beings, and we have a spiritual and a religious life, and we have a physical life, which are inseparable from each other at the moment. And so those two things have to work in tandem and together all the time. And so, yes, we have to be grateful for God, for graces and gifts that He gives us along the way. But you can't pray your way to a degree. You've had to put in the hard work.
Right, yeah, so
you've had to put in the hard work, and to put in the hard work, you've had to exercise self-discipline and control and effort and all those things. And there is nothing wrong with being legitimately proud of achievements. Pride in something worthy is a laudable thing. Aquinas calls it piety, which is pride and love for your parents and your country. Piety, because it's you're grateful for what you've received and where you come from, and there is a way to do that legitimately. Pride in things becomes a problem, becomes sinful when you start to live and act as if other people are more important. You are more important than other people, or better than other people.
Right, I see.
That's where the problem comes in.
So that's when pride turns into almost self-worship, when you think you're better.
Precisely.
Right.
The whole purpose of the Christian life is to live, well, is to become like Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is the perfect model of love. What is love? Love, fundamentally, when you boil it down to its bare bones, love is living as though the other person is more important than you are. That's what love is. And there's nothing wrong with having pride in your achievements, but the second you start to treat your achievements as things to batter other people over the head with, it's a problem.
That's a beautiful quote. Yeah.
Love is living as though the other person is more important than you are. That is what it means to love.
I have a friend who is bisexual, and recently he's in a relationship with a man, and he's felt something tugging on his sleeve, so to speak. And his question was, how do I love the church when I feel like it doesn't love me, even though I'm interested and curious about it?
Okay.
Start there.
Well, it's a shame he feels like that, because of course the easy and the immediate answer, of course, is the church does love him. Of course it does, as does God. The church and God love everyone, without exception. And the first thing the church does, for a start, it doesn't like labels on sexuality. It doesn't like gay and bi and things, because immediately the starting point of the discussion then is you're building someone's identity around their kind of sexual preferences, and that is a really reductivist way of looking at a person. It's a very base way of looking at a person, because our sexual preferences are such a small part of who we are, when really the church looks at the reason the church loves him and the reason God loves him is because he's a child of God, made in the Lord's image and likeness, before and above all things. And so his sexual preferences are, in fact, as far as the church is concerned, such a minor aspect of him and his character. You would never take those as the starting point. A physical relationship between two men, there's no way of explaining it away, because the church says that's sinful. Because the use of the sexual faculty outside of marriage for anybody is sinful, because it is directed away from the purpose for which God intends it. And there is no there's no way around that.
So it's sinful in the way that like any premarital relations are. Yes. So it's not worse or better.
No, it's not worse or better. It's
all on the same band.
Any sexual activity outside of marriage is sinful, and that's because the sexual faculty is for, first of all, the procreation of children, and second of all, the unification of the married couple, and their expression of mutual love and affection. And anything outside those, whether it's masturbation or whether it's gay sex or whatever, God knows whatever else, anything outside of that faculty is sinful, neither better nor worse.
I see. It's quite funny. I mean, the day after he sent me that message, he said, funny, we just had that conversation. So his partner, somebody anonymously sent his partner a King James Bible with a note written on it, basically saying God forgives all sin. Obviously, because he's a gay man, we sent him that, and yeah, which is quite a shame. Again, I think it shows that some people don't. I think
the church's job is not to castigate people for the way they live. It's to show people how to live, and plenty of gay people go to church and go to mass and whatever. We all struggle with different sins in our own lives, and we all have our own particular kind of weaknesses in terms of sin. And marriage obviously is a sacrament, and marriage is between a man and a woman, and that's that, because that's the way that God has ordained it, and it's not ours to play with. We don't have the authority to change it. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with people of the same sex loving each other. There's nothing wrong. I'm afraid to be crude. It boils down to kind of physical realities, and that's the perennial and ancient teaching of the church.
Yeah, there we are. The one is about suicide. Mm-hmm. So again, I'm quoting my friend here. I don't know if this is true or not, but he said the traditional teaching of the Catholic Church, from his knowledge, was that if you kill yourself, you've ended your life prematurely. You're going to hell. Don't know if it's that simple, but that was his belief. People who've killed themselves, for sort of mental health reasons. Does God's mercy extend to them?
Of course.
Yeah.
And he's right in one sense, and you're right in the other, because the teaching of the church is and remains that suicide is a mortal sin. And if we die in a state of mortal sin, we go to hell. Because we haven't confessed our mortal sins, so there's been that hasn't been removed, and so we go to hell if the mortal sin remains on our soul at the point of death. Because when we die, all through our lives, we have every moment of our life is an opportunity to choose before God or against God, with God or not with God. But decision making stops at the moment of death, because the moment of death is our particular judgment, and you can't make a decision at that point because free will is gone. It's over. So mortal sin at the point of death is hell. Committing suicide is a mortal sin. However, you then have to ask yourself, well, what is a mortal sin? And for a sin, all sins are offences against God and other people, and the sins vary in gravity. If I go up and nip somebody, it is not of the same magnitude or gravity as if I go up and stab somebody. They are manifestly two different crimes, sins. So sins have, there are categories that help us understand what kind of sins are. Sins that are not mortal are called venial, which means less serious. Mortal sins are serious sins. For a sin to be considered mortal by the church, you have to meet several categories. And the first category that a sin has to fulfill in order for it to be a mortal sin is that the person committing the mortal sin commits it entirely of their own volition and free will. The second is that they understand that it is a mortal sin. The next condition is that they commit it with a comprehensive understanding of the consequences of their actions. And the fourth thing is that they make the decision unimpededly. So to commit a mortal sin, if I, completely in my right mind now, decide I'm going to go out and murder somebody, there are no mitigating circumstances. That I have done it because I decided to, and I know what I'm doing. Or if I go and have an extramarital affair, I'm doing it and I know it's wrong. I know full well it's wrong, but I go and do it anyway because I'm selfish and what I want to do. That's a mortal sin. The church would say, because to commit suicide, no human being in their right mind commits suicide, because there must be some, maybe some people do, I would imagine it's very, very rare. To be able to get to that point and to be able to do it, there must be such mental anguish and there must be such confusion and imbalance for somebody to take that course of action. It's not possible for them to fulfill the category of mortal sin, because they're not able to. You cannot say somebody who's killed themselves, on the whole, has done it freely, unreservedly, decidedly, with the knowledge that what they're doing is cutting themselves off from the life of God, which is what you do when you commit a mortal sin. So the church would say that when somebody does commit suicide as a result of a mental health issue or whatever, of course God's mercy extends to them because they're not really culpable. Their culpability is diminished or even completely void because they've not understood what the gravity of what they're doing.
Yeah.
To commit a mortal sin, you have to be aware of the gravity of it. And if you kill yourself, you're not aware of the gravity of what you're doing.
Okay.
And so, obviously, we would say those people, of course, experience God's mercy because they're not culpable for what they've done.
Which is why it goes back to what you said at the start about it's important to pray for people who have died.
Absolutely. Yeah, those souls will have an awful lot of the problems and the effects of what they've done, and all that will cling to them probably for a very long time, so they need our prayers. But certainly the church wouldn't say they go to hell because it's not their fault, basically. And purgatory, we don't know what purgatory is like, obviously, but it must be. Experience tells us that any great change is difficult and unsettling. They say that moving house is the most stressful thing you can do, other than getting divorced maybe. So if changing where you live can cause such great stress, or changing jobs, moving house, all these things, all these experiences of our lives of change produce stress and discomfort and disquiet for a while. Being born, I mean, the baby's all, you know, sitting there in the womb all nice and warm and cosy. Suddenly it's kind of like squeezed and pushed out into this like loud, bright world.
Yeah.
Fine, the world is better. It's bright and it's colourful, it's beautiful, but it's screaming and it's unsure, and it's if being born or moving house or getting a new job causes stress and change, how great and more significant is the change from moving this world into eternity and from this life into eternal life? It's not, you're not going to just like wake up in paradise. There's all change causes stress, and so I'm not saying that purgatory is stressful, but it's going to be a difficult time. It's a time of adjustment. And going back to what I said earlier about being pure enough and ready to enter into heaven, it's like walking. It's like sitting in a very, very dark room all afternoon and walking out onto the brightest, sunniest day of the year. When you do, your eyes sting a bit, and it takes your eyes a little while to adjust and to focus. But you get there eventually. You slowly, things come into focus, and then you're in the lovely bright day. And I think that's a bit like purgatory, and a bit like the results of sin. Sin is sitting in this dark place all the time, and it'll take our eyes, the eyes of our soul, a little time to adjust to that brightness of God's presence.